Om Shanti. This evening we're taking up the subject of unlimited renunciation, and I'm sure that all of you must have read recently or perhaps some time ago the series of Murlis on renunciation. Am I right? Did everyone read those? Yes? I think ultimately the song that we just heard said everything, and that is that the only thing in my heart is Baba. I think that is really the essence of unlimited renunciation, but still we should go a little bit into the details. In the Murlis, Baba has often mentioned the contrast between limited and unlimited renunciation, where he says that the sannyasis have limited renunciation because they give up their hearth and home, but they don't give up the world, whereas we give up the world. And so how does that play out in reality? For many of us, we give up many things that were going on for us in the world, and for some of us, we give up our Lokic life and we stay in centers. How many here are living in centers? And the center is also a world, isn't it? It's very easy to replace the Lokic world with the center world. But then renunciation comes in there also. What is really renunciation? I suppose we should say that there are many levels of it. And the first level of renunciation is really on a physical level, and we will adopt vegetarian diet. For us, we don't think of that as renunciation, but for many people it is renunciation. But then within food, you see, not only there is vegetarian diet, but also a renunciation of food that is prepared by non-yogis. So it may be vegetarian, but if it's prepared by non-yogis, then also we would renounce that. But even then, we would not say that that's really renunciation, because we like better the food that is made by people who are pure, and we like better food which has been offered because it's made sacred and it's filled with pure vibrations, and it makes our meditation better. And so hardly we would say that it's renunciation. And the food that is prepared and offered in Baba's remembrance is also very tasty. And so not that we have renounced taste even. We renounce intoxicants, but even that is not a renunciation in a way, because whatever intoxicants we may have been using, many people never did use any intoxicants, but some may have, and those become addictions, and we wish to be free from any kind of addiction. And so Baba's love, Baba's remembrance, and the power of yoga actually enables us to be free from those. So that is also hardly a renunciation, isn't it? What else do we renounce? We practice celibacy. And for many people, that is considered a very big renunciation, But can we really call that a renunciation? Because those involvements create so much problems for many people that to live a pure and celibate life, to have a brotherly and sisterly relationship is so much more pleasant, so much easier, so much freer from all of the ups and downs that the usual worldly relationships contain, that again we would say, well, hardly is this a renunciation. Do you agree? Yes? One or two agree. Any more than one or two agree with that? Yes. So the things that perhaps worldly people looking at us would say, yeah, that may be a renunciation, still for us we would say, no, it is not a renunciation, it's freedom, it's pleasure, it's an easy life for us to live our spiritual principles, because we do it from our heart. I can't remember the other things that we renounce. Sleep. Yes, sleep. Well, is there anything more pleasant than Amrit Vela? When you wake up early in the morning and you come to Baba's room and you enjoy filling yourself with power, with light, with love, and you're not sleepy. Yeah, there isn't anything more pleasurable than that. And then the rest of the day is very pleasant because you have been filled. And whenever you miss Amrit Vela, or maybe you're sitting there, but you're missing it anyway, then you feel deprived, yes? So on one hand we could say, okay, renunciation of sleep, but in reality I think that if we pace ourselves correctly, and if we give importance to taking care of our physical vehicles, then we will make sure that we have sufficient sleep so that our early morning meditation is not compromised, you see. So the night before becomes an important element, perhaps, of renunciation, rather than the renunciation of sleeping in the morning. Because we have to be quite attentive to make sure that we are ready to sleep by 10 or 10:30. If you have just watched the news, and it's full of bombs and terrorists and so on and so forth, then you may find that you are very stimulated, and then you are not ready to sleep, you see. And so in that way, one of the things that we renounce is television and films and all of those things, because they do stimulate the mind and the body, and then it becomes difficult to sleep at the right time. And this is the thing that eats into our early morning Amrit Vela meditation. So the night before sleeping, you could say it's renunciation of laziness, but if we truly give ourselves half an hour of introspection, of meditation, of chart checking before sleeping, it's very, very good for our next morning's meditation. And perhaps we could say there is a little bit of renunciation there, because it's easy to find other things to do instead of that. So here, the kind of renunciation we're talking about is really something like giving up being inattentive, or giving up, not paying attention to the preparation that's necessary for having a good meditation. Many of you may not know this, but Dadi Prakashmani always goes to Baba's room at 10 p.m. and she sits for half an hour, you see, and just has a very sweet, gentle meditation, lets go of the whole day, whatever are the things that have been going on, just places everything in front of Baba, and then there is very good rest. And then in the morning, it's very easy to have good Amrit Vela, you see. And in fact, for our Brahman life, renunciate life perhaps, but for our Brahman life to be really good, if we are absolutely regular with the Amrit Vela, everything happens, you know. Sometimes you may find you have to really work to create good Amrit Vela. Some people, they say, well, in order to have a good Amrit Vela, maybe I have to read a couple of murlis, have a cup of tea, take a shower. You know, they do all kinds of things to wake themselves up. And that may be good, but sometimes to do such things will pull you away from the subtle stage of consciousness that's possible when you wake up and very gently go into Amrit Vela. The kinds of things that constitute really deep, unlimited renunciation have to do with things that go on in our mind. Because on a physical level, the things that we do are really things that help us to develop that subtlety of mind which we're all looking for. We want to have pure thoughts. And I think really unlimited renunciation is all about that. It's something deeply going on in the mind. And many physical renunciations are complementary to that. But physical renunciations in and of themselves are in a sense quite limited. So we'll take the word unlimited to refer especially to things that are very subtle, things that are mental. We need to renounce having thoughts about others. This is sometimes called Pardarshan Chakra. You must have heard this expression. We know the expression Swadarshan Chakra, the spinning of the cycle of the self, and Swachintan, which is thinking deeply about the self, understanding who I am, who I really am. But so often we will think about ourselves in a way that's perhaps not entirely spiritual. Say, for example, if we think about ourselves in a way that creates self-doubt, that is thought about the self, but it's based in something negative, and therefore it cannot be really termed thought about the self. It would be thought about what the self is not. You know? Self-doubt is something that comes up in many people's minds. And self-doubt occurs when we make comparisons with other people. And so it stems originally from thinking about somebody else. You think about another person then you think about yourself in comparison with that other person, and you think that you're thinking about yourself, but in reality, it's because of thinking about someone else. So to think about oneself, where it doesn't have anything to do with anyone else, is connected with the idea of solitude. And I think, in a way, one very useful form of unlimited renunciation is to create a stage within where you are comfortable in being completely alone with Baba. Because as the song we just heard said, let there be only Baba in the heart and no one else. So in order for that to take place, we need to enable ourselves to be alone. Alone in the sense of emotionally independent and socially free from anxiety. Because sometimes people experience anxiety within the context of social situations. Does anybody experience such things? Yes? No? It's all top secret, right? But sometimes when you go inside yourself and think about yourself deeply, when you're completely alone by yourself, are you happy? Are you really happy to be you? You know? Because if you can reach that stage of knowing yourself so clearly and recognizing yourself in such a beautiful way that you feel, yes, the very, very best thing there is that I am me. It's a very, very nice realization when you have that. Sometimes it takes a while to reach that stage, and often it is because either we compare ourselves with someone else unfavorably, or we have an idea about what we think we're supposed to be, and then we don't fit with that idea. Do you sometimes experience something like that? When that happens, then we can easily get into a stage of self-doubt. So I think one of the important things to renounce is when our mind wanders off into those kinds of thoughts. You see? In order to find out who I really am actually takes many, many years. You see? So in that case, one form of renunciation that we do need to have is renouncing the idea that all of this, what we are trying to accomplish in Raj Yoga, happens, in a split second. Yes, Baba speaks about Jivan Mukti in a second, but to get to that second takes a little while. It's just one of those things. So whenever you find yourself thinking, and in a way you need to have a lot of alone time so that you really know what you're thinking. And this is another reason why the Amrit Vela is so important, because in Amrit Vela, whatever is the sort of negative residual thoughts that are capable of interfering with your progress, they will come up during Amrit Vela. Have you noticed that? Yeah? And so one of the reasons why people fall asleep in Amrit Vela is because of these other thoughts. And sometimes it's even said that these kinds of negative thoughts that try to come up, or this kind of laziness that takes place, because as soon as Amrit Vela is over, you perk up, you see. Have you noticed that? And right before, you're fine. and during, and then... So sometimes it's been considered that this is a karmic account that's getting settled. And so one has to find different ways to resist it. So it's not useful to force the mind, but it is important to quite strongly direct the mind. And so there's some distinction between strongly directing the mind and forcing the mind. Because when you force the mind, then it throws you back into body consciousness, so that doesn't work. And when you strongly direct the mind, I always use the term noticing. Notice what's going on. Notice when you're not thinking about what you think you are supposed to be thinking about or want to think about. It's good to give yourself something very specific to think about during Amrit Vela, and then you can see when you deviate from that. Because what you want is to have only Baba in your mind. And in order to create that, you may begin with something akin to a cardboard cutout of Baba. It's a kind of unidimensional thing. And what you want to do is create some depth and think up things to say to Baba and think about Baba which are not routine things. Because when you think of routine things, your mind will say, who are you trying to kid? What's going on here? Why are you doing this? You might as well be repeating prayers, And we have now renounced the practices of bhakti, and we've come into Gyan, which is a kind of an exploration of ways to bring God into our minds and into our hearts in such a way that it stays, that it's alive, that it's three-dimensional, that it's meaningful, you see? Because otherwise it wouldn't really sustain us. And so there's actually a lot of exploration and experimentation that needs to take place. And so another form of renunciation is renunciation of getting impatient with ourselves, you see. We may spend an entire Amrit Vela getting ready to do Amrit Vela. And that's not so bad. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Because each thing that we do, which is for this purpose, even if at the time it doesn't seem that we have got very far, it's nevertheless a very important aspect of spiritual effort, and it is a part of our accumulation. And so even if you spend an entire Amrit Vela trying to adjust your mind so that it is stable, steady, and focused, and that it can take off and become very still, very silent, and still you don't fall into sleep, you see. So for that we have to be very pure and very subtle. And for that we have to take out impurities. And how do we take out impurities? We take them out by doing this, by sitting in front of Baba, especially in Amrit Vela, and calling upon Baba to come and be with us, so that you can be free from the consciousness of the body, be focused in an interesting way on Baba, And when your mind goes off, either if it goes into a lazy state, or it goes into a preoccupied state, or you start thinking about just service or activities or memories or any of those things, notice what you're doing and see if you can bring your thought to a little bit more higher, a little bit more refined level. Sometimes you may find in Amrit Vela that there is some kind of an obsessive set of thoughts going on. Have you experienced that? Which have nothing to do with Amrit Vela, but yet they come up, you see. Has anybody experienced that? You have to put your hands up so I know, otherwise I think you're all already karmatit and there's no need for me to sit here. Yeah. So these are the karmic accounts. Well, I think you can give an example. Obsessive thoughts, say you're thinking about something that happened, somebody did something, or you don't like something, that kind of thing, you see. This is getting going round and round and round in your mind. This is obsessive, when it keeps on repeating. And instead of having Baba in your mind, you have that thing, you see. And you can't make it go away. That means it has it has you in its grip. It has possession over you, see. And so many people put their hands up that, yeah, this thing happens. So these are karmic accounts. And one of the ways in which we can also consider karmic accounts is that they are sort of expressions of our false ego. Because false ego is another word for body consciousness. And what we're trying to do in unlimited renunciation is remain soul conscious. So body consciousness is indicated when we have some kind of strong emotion about something. Either we really like it or we really don't like it. You know, we get pulled by something emotionally. That's actually body conscious. There is intoxication, spiritual intoxication, which is said to be the only intoxication that is not harmful, but I would distinguish that from an emotion. I would call it very different than an emotion. And the extraordinary experience that happens in spiritual intoxication is a kind of a gift, a godly gift. It's relatively rare peak experience of meditation, and it's really beyond emotion. It's very, very subtle, and it comes as a result of serious meditative work to bring yourself into a very deep, involved focus with Baba in relationship, in mental communion, and that's very, very good quality work. This kind of thing happens when you frequently meditate over quite a long period of time, I see. And Baba talks a lot about balance. So in order for us to frequently meditate over a long period of time, we have to pay a lot of attention on it. Sometimes it has been said that if we meditate very frequently during the day, and with a very good evening meditation, a very good nighttime meditation, then the morning meditation will be very good, because you're really bringing yourself strongly into meditation and you're giving that a very high priority. But what happens to upset the balance is there are many duties that you have, many service projects that you want to accomplish, and very often people will substitute the practice of meditation with service activities. And while it is true that service activities do keep us involved with Baba, they can quite easily become a reason why we don't meditate. And some of you may have experienced that. And we even do find that if our meditation is down, our meditation level is down, then our service activities require a lot more effort and a lot more time. Have you experienced that? And so one of the things that Dadi Janki very often mentions is that she will give 95% attention on the self and 5% attention on service, you see. Because service is a very tangible thing. And when we do service, we get the natural reward of happiness, feeling connected, and so on. But in comparison with real tapasya, of really focusing strongly on meditation, it's secondary, you see. So what I'm wanting to focus on in this session here is to really accumulate and increase the time that's spent in meditation, so that you do indeed finish the karmic accounts, because karmic accounts are in our way, and we have to be strong enough to move them out of the way with the power of yoga, because as you know, karmic accounts during the confluence age are to be settled, and karmic accounts get settled through yoga, or through physical illness, or in the end through the Dharmaraj punishment and all that, you see. So there are many things that try to prevent us from actually finishing off our karmic accounts, and these sort of slow down our spiritual progress. And so what I feel is that the idea of unlimited renunciation has to do with just pinpointing, as far as we can, pinpointing where our karmic accounts are taking us away from our spiritual practice or our meditation practice. That means to say that we will think about other things during times of meditation, and that is like a karmic account asserting itself and not allowing you to meditate. And so when you notice that there's something else going on, and that includes feeling sleepy as well, then the effective thing to do is to make yourself subtle and alert. And that's not so easy, because when you make yourself subtle, then it'll push you into sleep. And if you make yourself alert, it'll push you away from being subtle. And so you have to find this very delicate place where you are both alert and subtle. And I think that the best way to achieve this, especially during the Amrit Vela, is to have a very good attention on what you do before you go to sleep, you see. One thing I have found for myself is it's probably a good idea to finish all kind of work by 9 o'clock. Because if you go further, then it actually puts certain pressure on your mind, which then reduces the quality of your meditation in the morning. And so it's just a very good thing to do, to really wind yourself down and let go of whatever the work or the duties are, and just let yourself be gently with Baba, you see, so that you rest in a gentle way, in a good way, and then you wake up without stress, without strain. I think many of us feel sometimes the sense of urgency to accomplish service projects. Do you find that? Do you? Yes? Because there is urgency about it, and Baba has given a lot of attention on now. 900,000 people is just for starters. Now we're going for 900 million or 300 million, and so it's not going to end. And the more service you do, the more service you generate, and it's very easy to let oneself slip into a state of tiredness through the urgency of doing service, such that it becomes counterproductive. The law of diminishing returns sets in. Have you noticed that? And then it takes more time and more effort to do the service. And so one thing that I think is important, an important aspect of renunciation, unlimited renunciation, is to notice when enough is enough and to stop, you see, and say, okay, now it's time to meditate. Now let me keep the balance. So I think in a way unlimited renunciation has to do with within your conscience, which is an aspect of the intellect, having it so fine-tuned that you notice when you're going out of balance, you see. In the same way, if you say, okay, I'll only do meditation and I won't do the other things, this is also out of balance, you see. And we need to become very sensitive, very well tuned, so that we know what has to be done. Because we can't just have endless rules about this should be done, that should be done, the other should be done. We need to be sensitive to it. And unlimited renunciation is really to renounce the idea that I don't know what is the right thing. We do know. And when we tune ourselves, then it becomes clearer to us, and we must follow that inner voice that tells us, yes, I know when enough is enough, and I understand what my duties are, and I fulfill them, you see. And when we do try for this, and focus specially on quality Amrit Vela, finishing karmic accounts, then we find that we progress very well, you see. So again, it's not that we're giving anything up. The only thing we're giving up is being neglectful, being gross instead of subtle, comparison with other people, self-doubt, these kinds of things we really have to give up. It's very easy for us to indulge in those things, or we will give ourselves this and say, am I doing enough? Have you ever used the word enough for yourselves? Is it enough? Am I doing enough? Have I done enough meditation? Do I understand this knowledge enough? Do I do enough service? Do I have enough sleep? This word enough is an awkward word, because I think in many ways it pushes us also into body consciousness. And instead of the word enough, I think it's just very important to go for the word balance. Do I feel balanced? Is everything moving well and smoothly? Yes, there are bound to be many times when circumstances are such that nothing at all happens. Have you experienced days like that? Nothing works? Whatever you want to do, it won't work? Have you experienced that? So then it's quite a good idea to have some backup things to do when nothing works, you know? And also to be, or to give things and people and even yourself permission in your mind to be whatever it is that they are. Because sometimes we think something is supposed to be a certain way and we try to force it, and if it's not that kind of day, then we have to just allow it to be what it is. Now, sometimes the drama requires us to be very active, very proactive, and other times drama requires us to just sit down and wait until that more passive period passes, I see. And that can also be considered an opportunity for us to just sit down, be quiet, and be in meditation, I see. Because when everything else doesn't work, then use the time to just sit, be quiet, consolidate, remember who you are, what you are, and allow that to be fine exactly the way it is, you know, so that such moments do not provoke feelings of frustration within us. Because if we become frustrated because we want something to be and it isn't going to be, then also we have wasted our time. So that is also another aspect of unlimited renunciation, that we renounce wasting our time in this way by trying to force something to happen that isn't going to happen. And for that, again, we have to be very sensitive to the moments of drama. You may have a plan, you may have an expectation, something happens, it can't be what you wanted. And so we have to always be willing and flexible to work with whatever is going on around us. I think another important area of unlimited renunciation has to do with expectations. We have certain expectations of ourselves, and then sometimes we will project those expectations onto other people. Suppose we say, okay, I'm living in a center and this is how a centerwasi is supposed to be, and then all the other centerwasis, you want them to be that way. I see. Do you experience that? And then they're not. And then you get irritated with them. That has to be renounced because, you know, on one level, we need to communicate with each other very well, but on another level, we also have to notice when to not impose our preconceptions about what's supposed to be on other people and allow them to be whatever it is that they are, because otherwise we can easily come into conflict. We may say, well, I'm inspiring this person to do the right thing, and they may feel that you're irritating them and preventing them from practicing the way they understand. Because in reality, Gyan is understood and interpreted by all of us slightly differently. We have different priorities. We have received slightly different training from different seniors, where the emphasis is maybe on one side or maybe on another side. And it's very easy to feel, especially in the early years of Gyan, that there's just only one way to do this. And in fact, there are many, many ways to do this, just as there are many, many ways to love Baba. Each one loves Baba in their own way. Each one takes Baba into their heart in their own way. And so a very important element of renunciation is, I think, to just, in your mind, say to all those that you are in constant contact with, that you give them full permission to be exactly who they are. And then you won't think about what they're doing or not doing, you know. And then together with that, it becomes very important to develop communication skills so that your partnership is workable and that each one is able to be who they are individually, and at the same time we have maximum collaboration and cooperation with one another so that there is unity, there is harmony, there is consensus, agreement. And for that, very often we need to have a renunciation of our ideas, our preconceptions. And a lot of that has to do with taste. It was a very nice phrase that was given to me by one of the university professors that I've been working with here. And she said that when it's a matter of principle, be firm. And when it's a matter of taste, be pliable, flexible. And that is actually, I find, quite a useful yardstick to apply. Because matters of principle are ethical matters, and matters of taste can be cultural. And if we are flexible about matters of taste, nothing bad will happen, you know. If something is, to your way of thinking, ugly, it's not the end of the world. But if something is dishonest, then it's more important to take care of, you know. And you also find that different people have different criteria about what's correct procedure, even in terms of ethics and morality. There are plenty of variations which are affected by cultural considerations, and all of us in the Brahmin family have many different cultural influences that we are not consciously aware of, and they color how we think about things and how we do things. And sometimes they can become the reason why people come into conflict with each other. And so when you apply this little yardstick of being pliable in matters of taste, it actually results in greater unity and greater harmony, you know. Because ultimately, what difference does it make really if you have 10 people on stage or 3 people? And sometimes that's a big matter of contention, you know. And yes, it's important for things not to go on too long and so on and so forth, but it's just very important to know how and where to be flexible. We have a lot of opinions which are taste-based, and sometimes taste becomes so important that we consider it to be an ethical question. But actually, if you become ready to let go of those taste-based differences, you find that it does bring consensus and ease a lot more efficiently and effectively. So renunciation of your taste is actually quite an important unlimited renunciation to do. And you may say, but I have good taste, and you want me to accept bad taste. But yes, do it anyway. The golden age will be very good. Because there are other considerations, in a way good taste is very expensive. And so if you have something that's very good taste and very expensive, then you may run your centers in such a way that it's beyond your means. And then that becomes not a good idea. So we have to take into consideration many factors, and renouncing such things as good taste is actually very often an important step to take in order that everything can be properly covered. So allow that to be. There are also considerations that you have to work on. How closely do you model what you do on the way that everything is done in Madhuban, and to what extent you become flexible to accommodate your local environment, cultural concerns, you see. So these are also areas where balancing is needed, and you will find sometimes a lot of renunciation is required when several BKs have to reach consensus. But the important form of unlimited renunciation that Baba gives a lot of credit for is when the other one's opinion is respected and given regard, so that the highest priority he gives to agreeing among ourselves. And I think in order to agree among ourselves comfortably, we need to develop good negotiation skills. And together with that, also be ready to let go of your idea, because if you have a good idea, then you know it's a good idea, but it may not be the right time. And so sometimes it's necessary to give up a good idea and kind of hold it in reserve for another time when it may be the right time. So that kind of renunciation has very beneficial consequences. So we're just about at 7, and I don't want to cut into our evening meditation time. So I will stop there, and we will sit together for half an hour and think about these things, different forms of unlimited renunciation. If any of the points have come up that apply to you, see in what ways you can adjust yourself so that you are more free, more flexible, more harmonious, more subtle, and especially give very good importance to the preparation the night before you sleep, so that you can have good quality Amrit Vela. That is, I think, very, very important, unlimited renunciation. Om Shanti.